What's good, fellow outcasts and other rejects? It's Nier here, and welcome to WTC, the Anime Outcast. First off, if you're new here, we upload anime what-ifs based around My Hero and other shows alike. Secondly, did you know 80% of our audience isn't subscribed? So if you want us to continue making videos, make sure to like and subscribe. Now let's get into the video. His screams continued to echo throughout the apartment building, as Izuku fell to his knees as his mother laid lifeless on the ground. Desperately trying to resuscitate her, the Emerald Youth pleaded for his mom to wake up, but to no avail. Mom! Mom! Hey, look at me! Look at me, Mom! Don't leave me! Please! As Inko's blood enveloped the boy's hands, Izuku's screams slowly turned into sobs, as he realized that it was just far too late. Falling onto the ground, the boy soon fell unconscious, as he couldn't take in what had just unfolded. It didn't take long for his neighbors to notice the cries coming from inside the suite below. Walking out of their apartments out of curiosity, they immediately noticed a horror emanating from the apartment complex, as they gasped at the sight of both Inko and Izuku. "Call the paramedics! Something must have happened to him!" shouted one of the neighbors, as another neighbor desperately got onto his phone and to call the local authorities. Waking up from the flashing red and blue lights of an ambulance, Izuku hoped that this was just a bad dream that he had just awoken from, but the familiar scent of iron hit him once again. "Mom," was all the boy could mutter, before being escorted out of the apartment building, as Mr. Tsukauchi arrived at the scene, along with the symbol of peace. "No! Let go of me! I need to save my mom!" shouted the traumatized youth, as one of the police officers continued to pull him out of the building, as Tsukauchi and All Might rushed towards the crime scene. "Young Midoriya? What the hell Before he could even finish speaking, the skinny symbol of peace turned his attention towards the crime scene, as his skin instantly grew pale upon looking at the sight of Inko Midoriya. Oh no. Recognizing the familiar voice of his idol, Izuku turned towards the pale blonde as Mr. Tsukauchi gasped at the lifeless body of Inko Midoriya. Was all the boy could mutter before being hugged by the symbol of peace, instantly staining his white shirt with Inko's blood. As All Might attended to his successor, Mr. Tsukauchi proceeded to investigate the crime scene, doing his best to hold back the vomit. He immediately noticed a stab wound coming from Inko's chest. Realizing that this was in fact a murder, the detective continued to search for clues onto who was responsible. But as he surveyed the room, he noticed a blood-stained katana lying a few feet behind him. Connecting the dots, he soon realized a certain hero killer might be to blame. While All Might continued to comfort his traumatized successor, the familiar sound of Oliver's motorcycle screeched to a halt as the rich billionaire quickly took off his helmet. Noticing a blood-covered Izuku, Oliver quickly ran to the boy. But before he could even reach him, he was stopped by one of the police officers. "Sir, you can't be here!" The officer said sternly as a group of paramedics quickly rushed Inko's lifeless body onto the ambulance. Shrugging off the police officer's orders, the well-suited man quickly made his way to the Midoriya residence. Finally meeting both All Might and Izuku, Oliver locked eyes with the symbol of peace. Not even exchanging a word, Oliver knew something had happened. Breaking eye contact with the skinny blonde, the silent vigilante walked inside the apartment complex. This is Tsukauchi finished his initial investigation. "Mr. Queen, what brings you here?" the detective asked, to which Oliver responded with a serious glare, asking the overcoated man to leave the room. Tsukauchi complied as the CEO of Queen Consolidated quickly put his forensic skills to good use. While Oliver was busy surveying the area, Mr. Tsukauchi concluded that the hero killer might be to blame. Overhearing the conversation between the two, Izuku's eyes glowed with a vengeful aura. "Young Midoriya, I think you should stay at UA for the time being. I'm sorry I wasn't able to be here just in time," said the comforting All Might as Oliver walked out of the apartment complex. "If you don't mind, I'll take him for the night," Oliver abruptly said, locking eyes with the symbol of peace, to which he immediately objected. "I think young Midoriya would be safer at UA, Mr. Queen." Realizing that he was right, the understanding billionaire obliged, letting Izuku go. The Emerald Vigilante watched as both Tsukauchi and All Might led the freckled youth into their car, before driving off into the night. The ride to UA was completely silent, apart from Tsukauchi giving his condolences to his traumatized youth. But apart from that, The boy couldn't even process the recent events. By the time he knew it, Izuku had finally arrived at UA, as Nezu was already waiting for them. Principal Nezu, young Midoriya will be... Before All Might can finish speaking, the white bear raised his paw, as he already knew the reason why Izuku was there.
I'm well aware, All Might. Let's just focus on getting Mr. Midoriya accommodated before we discuss our next move,
responded the principal, as the two of them escorted Izuku into the main building. Finally arriving at the staff lounge, Izuku collapsed on the couch, not even caring if it was a bed or not, as all the Greenette wanted to do was sleep the rest of the night, hoping that this night was just a bad dream. Barely getting enough sleep, Izuku woke to the alarming sounds of the school bell. As his eyes adjusted, he noticed a familiar sight of All Might standing in front of him. Carrying a look of concern, the symbol of peace asked the Greenette if he got enough sleep, to which the boy shook his head as tears started trickling down his freckled face. Young Midoriya, I'm sorry about what happened. I should have been there.
It's not your fault, All Might,
Izuku abruptly said, as he quickly placed his hand on skinny blonde's shoulder, doing his best to reassure his mentor. The Greenette shared a weak smile towards his idol. Before All Might could respond, Sakauchi suddenly entered the room. Surprised to see his old friend, All Might quickly got to his feet as he greeted the young detective. Sakauchi, what are you doing here? Questioned the curious All Might, to which the detective immediately turned his attention towards the Emerald Youth. How's Midoriya doing? Completely disregarding the symbol of peace, Sakauchi immediately sat down as he quickly opened his briefcase. He's, just a bit shooken up. Tried to do my best to reassure him and everything. What's wrong? Did you find something? Nodding in All Might's response, the young detective proceeded to take out a portfolio as he placed it on the coffee table. Can I talk to Midoriya privately? I won't be long, if that's okay with you, asked the detective as he finally took his attention off the young teen. Of course! Take all the time you need, answered All Might, as he quickly left the staff lounge, leaving both Izuku and Sakauchi alone. As a few moments of silence passed, Sakauchi couldn't help but notice the amount of guilt and regret coming from Izuku. It was as if he was staring into the empty abyss. In an attempt to ease the tension, the young detective was the first one to speak. Midoriya, I'm sorry for your loss. Doing his best to talk to the freckled youth, Izuku looked towards the young detective. Barely being able to speak, Greenette opened his mouth.
Thanks. It's just... if only I...
Able to save her? I know. It's not your fault. Doing his best to reassure the young boy, Sakauchi exchanged a smile towards the Greenette as he promptly opened his portfolio. Before we get started, I'd like to ask you a couple questions if that's okay with you, the overcoated detective said as Izuku nodded at his request. Great. First things first. Where were you before your mom got attacked?
I was visiting Oliver Queen. He wanted to congratulate me on winning the sports festival,
answered Izuku, doing his best to hide his true reasons for the young detective. I'm sure he's proud of you, Midoriya. Winning a sports festival is no easy feat. But anyways, does your mom have any enemies in particular? Asked Sakauchi, only for Izuku to shake his head at the latter's question.
No, my mom was mostly stayed at home. Why?
Because, other than the hero killer being a potential suspect, I don't think the League of Villains would go out of their way to kill your mother. Especially after the USJ incident. Noticing some doubt coming from the detective, the freckled youth inquired about the status of the ongoing investigation, to which the overcoated detective revealed that the evidence they collected was nowhere to be found. Unfortunately, I'm unable to answer that question as of now. Before we were able to process a murder weapon, there was a brief power outage at the station early this morning, and by the time we were able to get the power back up, all the evidence that we had collected was just gone. It's as if it just vanished. Answering the Grunette's question, Izuku immediately knew who was responsible for stealing the evidence.
Oliver,
Izuku thought to himself as Sakauchi stood from the couch. Packing his briefcase, the detective thanked the Emerald Teen's cooperation, as he wished him a farewell. Following Sakauchi's questioning, Izuku realized that it was already lunchtime. Knowing that he needed to get something to eat, the freckled youth headed for the cafeteria. As Izuku made his way to the cafeteria, he couldn't help but notice that several students were looking at him.
Is he alright? Why is he even here? Shouldn't he be at home?
I hope everything's alright with the kid. Doing his best to ignore all the attention, the Greenette continued to walk towards the food area. But before he was able to get himself some lunch, a familiar blonde approached the freckled youth. Oi! Deku! Hearing the voice of his childhood rival behind him, Izuku tried to ignore the spiky blonde, but as the Greenette attempted to walk away, Bakugo continued to approach the young boy.
Not today, Kachan. Not today.
Oi! Come on, Deku! Just want to talk. As Bakugo placed his hand on the Greenette's shoulder, the young archer quickly grabbed the boy's wrist as he effortlessly flung him into a table, breaking it in the process.
Oh my god, Midoriya, let go of him!
Shouted a shocked Ashido as Izuku continued to pin his former bully to the ground, as everyone continued to watch the altercation unfold. Feels good, doesn't it? Finally get even with me? Look, I get it. Your mom died. I'm sorry. Looking directly into the explosive blonde's eyes, Izuku noticed a look of remorse coming from his former bully. Coming to realization, the Greenette immediately released Bakugo from his grip as Kirishima helped him back up. Realizing what he'd just done, Izuku watched as all his classmates looked at him with utter concern. As the entire school was watching him, the Emerald Youth couldn't help but look at the crowds, as he instantly caught a glimpse of Uraraka. Locking eyes with the brunette, the Emerald teen couldn't help but notice her concern. Unable to take his eyes off her, Uraraka opened her mouth as she began to speak with the remorseful youth.
Deku?
Before she could even comfort the grieving teen, Izuku quickly ran off as everyone continued to watch in utter concern. Running as fast as he could, Izuku ran towards the exit, but before he could even reach the door, the freckled youth accidentally bumped into a young blonde.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry!
Quickly apologizing, the Emerald teen quickly gathered the girl's belongings, but just as he was about to hand all the loose papers to her, Izuku's eyes widened at the sight of the blonde girl.
Deku? Are you all...
Realizing he just bumped into Melissa, Izuku's eyes immediately began to water. As they have caused enough trouble for one day, the Emerald youth instinctively wrapped his arms around the young blonde. Surprised by this, Melissa noticed that Izuku was in a lot of emotional distress. Returning the hug, the two quietly embraced one another as he quietly planted a tracking device in the boy's backpack before breaking the hug.
Don't worry, Deku. You'll get through this. I promise.
Said the American girl, as the two young heroes went their separate ways. Running out of the school, Izuku didn't know where else to go. All he knew is that he needed to get out of UA and clear his mind. And if there was one place that the Greenette could go to get his mind straight, it was the Arrow Cave. Arriving at the Arrow Cave, Izuku wasted no time at swinging the sliding door. Upon swinging the door open, he noticed his mentor analyze the sword that was used the previous night. What the hell? Thinking someone had broken into the Arrow Cave, Oliver immediately reached for his bow, but just as he was about to fire his arrow, he noticed that it was his apprentice standing before him. Midoriya! What on earth are you doing here? Shouldn't you be at school? Oliver asked as he immediately lowered his bow, before making his way to comfort the freckled youth.
I didn't know what to do, Oliver. I don't know what's happening anymore,
muttered the boy, only for him to collapse to his knees as tears continued to trickle down his eyes like a never-ending waterfall. Midoriya, it wasn't your fault. As Oliver extended his arm towards the grieving teen, Izuku promptly swiped his hand away, surprising the Emerald Archer. Midoriya, are you alright? Asked Oliver, growing even more concerned for his apprentice, as Izuku locked eyes with the archer.
It's your fault she's dead.
Midoriya, what are you talking about? Just as Oliver placed his hand on Izuku's shoulder, the Greenette activated full cowling.
It's your fault she's dead!
Lunging towards the archer, Izuku tackled Oliver as the two crashed onto several display cabinets. Getting back up, the hooded vigilante blocked the Greenette's attacks, but as he tried to defend himself, he noticed that his apprentice wasn't being himself. Realizing this, the Green Arrow tried to comfort the rageful teen. Midoriya, you need to calm down! I know what it's like to lose someone you love! Doing his best to defuse the situation, Oliver continued to block the Greenette's attacks, but just as he did, he noticed that Izuku was not letting off. Attempting to make some space, the Emerald Archer quickly stunned his apprentice with a flashbang, but unfortunately had little to no effect on the freckled youth.
Shut up! You're the one to blame for all this!
Continuing to vent out his anger, Izuku unleashed a fury of smashes to which Oliver had no choice but to attack. As the two exchanged blows, the Emerald Archer continued to calm his apprentice down. "Midoriya, please! If you hadn't brought me into this stupid place, then maybe I would have been able to save my mom, god damn it!" Delivering a 15% Detroit smash, Izuku knocked Oliver to the ground. As he's about to get up, the freckled youth threw the Emerald Vigilante onto a wall, breaking several monitors in the process. Realizing Izuku was not going to stop, Oliver knew what he had to do. Getting to his feet, the hooded vigilante dropped his bow, and he looked directly at the Emerald Youth's eyes. "Midoriya, just listen to me. You know what it's like to lose a mother. Lose someone you love, especially when you had the power to save her. You need to understand. Had you tried to save her, you most likely would have wound up dead." Coming to realization, Izuku knew Oliver was right. Had he not gone to the Arrow Cave last night, he most likely would have died in an attempt to save his mother. What have I done? Finally letting himself grieve, the freckled archer fell to his knees. It's finally allowed himself to grieve. "Oliver, I'm so sorry!" Slowly approaching his apprentice, Oliver placed his hand on the boy's shoulder, as the freckled youth turned around to hug him. As the greenhead cried in his arms, the Emerald Archer knew that the hero killer had to be stopped. A few days following their small altercation, Inko's funeral had finally arrived, and some of Class 1A attended, including All Might, Aizawa, and Melissa. As everyone stood in utter silence, All Might proceeded to give the opening speech regarding the life of Inko Midoriya. It didn't take long for everyone to notice that there were two empty chairs. One that was reserved for Oliver, while the other one was reserved for Izuku. Seeing the empty seats beside Uraraka and Melissa, the two girls couldn't help but wonder why they were absent. Slowly approaching the portrait, both Melissa and Uraraka bowed in condolences towards the deceased Inko. As Ida approached the portrait of Izuku's mother, he noticed tears coming down in Uraraka's face. Turning his attention towards the memorial, the young Turbo hero couldn't help but feel bad for his fellow friend. "Oh, Midoriya, why aren't you here?" muttered the Turbo hero, just as his older brother motioned him that it was time to go. As Inko's funeral concluded, all of Class 1A spoke about the whereabouts of Izuku Midoriya, all of them asking why he would miss such an important day. "Isn't it odd for Midoriya to miss his own mother's funeral?" asked the worried Todoroki, as he quickly glimpsed at the remorseful Bakugo, who was currently fighting back tears. "Bakugo, are you alright?" Turning towards the son of Endeavor, Spiky Blonde quickly shrugged him off. "Fine. It's just my allergies," replied the explosive teen, as he quickly walked away from the bicolored teen. As the rest of the students watched Bakugo storm out of the manor, Melissa noticed that Uraraka was barely able to maintain herself. Unable to stop the endless stream of tears, the American blonde watched as Ida approached the crying brunette. "Hey, you alright?" the blue-haired boy asked, handing her a handkerchief, as she immediately wiped the tears off her face.
"I don't know why I'm even crying. I didn't even get to meet Deku's mom,"
continued Uraraka. Ida did his best to comfort her. "Those tears aren't for Inko, Uraraka. You're crying for Midoriya," Ida exclaimed as the two friends embraced one another.
"Where is he? Deku. I haven't seen him ever since he stormed out of UA,"
asked the concerned Uraraka, only for Ida to tell him he didn't know. Unable to stop worrying, Melissa decided it was time to take matters into her own hands. Quickly taking out her phone, the intelligent blonde opened the tracking app that was linked to the small device she had placed on the Greenette's backpack during their small run-in a few days prior. Finally pointing to Izuku's location, Melissa wasted no time locating the green-haired boy. Arriving at a large abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city, Melissa knew that this was the place. Looking at her phone, it informed her that Izuku was inside. Knowing that he was inside the large complex, the American blonde slowly opened the sliding door. Walking into the large warehouse, Melissa's eyes widened at the sight that laid upon her. To her left was a workout area consisting of salmon ladders, punching bags, and target practice areas. To her right was a huge desk containing many devices, such as computer monitors, a workstation that housed many trick arrows along with a display cabinet They displayed both Izuku and Oliver's hero costume, except that Oliver's display cabinet was unoccupied, as he was busy doing something else. It didn't take long for her to notice Izuku completely alone. He was sitting at one of the tables, looking at a childhood photo of himself and his mother. Slowly walking into the arrow cave, she slowly approached the crying teen. Placing her hands on the boy's shoulders, the greenette immediately turned around, only to see the blonde girl behind him. Locking eyes with one another, all that Melissa could see was the pain emanating from the emerald green eyes. Not even caring that the young blonde found the location of Oliver's hideout, Izuku broke down in tears as he once again hugged the comforting blonde. Stroking his puffy green hair, Melissa shared her condolences as the freckled youth continued to cry. While comforting him, she noticed that one of the TV monitors was on. Before she could even turn it off, a breaking news coverage started. Several news reporters reported the recent sightings of the Green Arrow. Melissa's eyes widened at the breaking headline news.
Arrow of Terror. Several villains killed as Green Arrow continues his murderous onslaught?
Muttered the shocked blonde as she continued to watch the news coverage while continuing to comfort the heartbroken teen. Thanks, Outcasts and Rejects, for watching till the end of the video. If this video gets 80 likes in 2 weeks, we'll continue the series. Other than that, if you have any questions about the series or channel, sound off in the comments and feel free to join our Discord. And that's Nier signing off. Hope you guys have a wonderful day.